Today we will answer the question, how do major news outlets decide what they report on? In school, we always talk about critical thinking. I thought to myself, what about the big sources? We trust most of them, but in order to find out how reputable these sources really are, I asked myself, what does the process look like before a story ends up on the news? Do they ever withhold information on purpose? They also need to make sure to look at things from multiple perspectives. Or do they? In this video, I will share my findings with you. Some big ideas that inspired me to start my research were the problem with media manipulation, propaganda, and fake news. It is often hard to filter through different sources when trying to find what is a neutral report on an issue and what is exaggerated or false information. I started my research by emailing the senior producer of CBC about the process to get a little more insight into how the news actually work, and this is what he said. Editors are faced with many more options every day than time to tell those stories. On the one hand, the process is fairly simple in that we look for stories that are new and have a wide impact on people or provide great insight into an ongoing issue. In the world of business, a big company has declared bankruptcy and hundreds of people are about to lose their jobs. That would immediately rise to the top of our assignment list. Safety is a priority, as in what is happening today that may bring harm to someone or to many people. If air quality is an issue, people need to know about that and change their behavior. Perhaps they will limit outdoor exposure. After that, there's the consideration for what works best for a text story, a TV story, or a radio story. A huge thank you to James Roberts, senior producer for CBC, for providing so much useful information. Once reporters decide what to cover, they need to think about how to convey the information in an unbiased way. However, striving to be unbiased can actually harm a story. Christiane Amanpour, a British-Iranian journalist, believes that it is important for the press to stay truthful. However, many people believe that truth is based on perspective, and journalists should be unbiased. This results in journalists trying to always give both sides of a story in order to avoid accusations of media manipulation, even if that might distort the truth. Christiane Amanpour gives the example of climate change. Even though there's an overwhelming amount of evidence that climate change is a direct cause of human actions, the media continues to include counter-arguments to challenge this. This false balance is not great, as some of the arguments are extremely far-fetched and are only included so that the media source does not seem biased. Jeremy Burke argues that the desire to appear unbiased leads to information loss. If organizations try to balance information, they might accidentally lose information. Or, like Ms. Amanpour said, the truth might get lost. After deciding which stories to cover and what parts of a story are important, there is also a lot of information that never makes it to the news. Sometimes stories are purposefully withheld from the public. For example, in 2012, there was a kidnapping of 5 US journalists in Syria. The NBC and other major news outlets decided not to report on the situation until afterwards. Journalists have to weigh the risks before reporting on something. However, when people find out that information has been withheld from them for multiple days, they might start questioning the integrity of the news organization and whether there's more information that is withheld from the public. So, the media cannot cover whatever they want. They too have to be careful in order to keep their integrity. The media can influence the audience, but the audience influences the media just as much. On the CBC website, there is a page on journalistic standards and practices. This is an example of how most major mainstream media try their best when choosing what to report on. There's a lot of pressure on major news organizations as the content they put out has a huge audience and they have to be considerate about what they publish. Initially, I thought that it was about what they want to report on and what they want the audience to see. But the audience is not stupid. If an organization publishes something that is not ethical, or if they withhold information or do anything that could lead people to believe that they're not considered in their actions, that can have huge consequences. So part of what is being put out is what they know the audience wants to hear. Sometimes these organizations might be a bit more careful about how they express themselves. not because they want to influence us in any way, but because they don't want to say something wrong and lose their integrity. The bottom line is, be aware of what you consume. Since there are so many stories to cover each day, the media often chooses the most important ones, and those are more often than not negative. If you are someone who watches the news daily or who reads a lot of articles online, that can have serious effects on your mental health. It is important to also think about the good in life, even if it is not considered to be worth reporting on. Even after doing all this research, I still have many questions, and you probably do too. But for now, this is where I stand. I went into this with a lot of skepticism, and my initial thought was that most news stories are biased and that that's bad. Large news outlets report on the most relevant news stories and try to do so without including any unwanted bias. They report on events that have a big impact or events that need to gain public attention. However, sometimes the need to have a balance of opinion can actually harm the image of a current topic, and the truth might get lost. I feel like there are many credible sources that are not trying to manipulate their stories, but rather strive to put out quality content in hopes of broadening their audience. Due to social media, we have a lot of access to sources that are not credible, so remember, it is important to always think critically, no matter where your news come from.